North Hudson Public Works Committee. This meeting has been properly noticed. Roll call, please.
Trustee Stanford?
Here.
Wecken?
Here.
And Zappa?
Here. We have full attendance and show that our Public Works Supervisor, Mark Ekblad, is also in attendance. The minutes from our previous meeting on 17 May have been distributed in draft form. Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 17 May 2011 Public Works meeting.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and they are carried. Mr. Ekblad, I'm assuming you will give us an update on the St. Croix Station project. I think our village engineer had the Cedar Corporation golf outing today. I am a little suspicious that they were interrupted up at Bristol Ridge this afternoon. But
as far as St. Croix Station, basically all the base is in. There's some areas that basically are soft, and they just contractors requesting time just to let them dry out, which both the engineer and I agree with. Is give them time to dry out, even though we keep getting these downpours, which ain't helping any. But it's if it'll just sit for a little bit, have a chance to dry out instead of having to dig it back up and redo the underbase, it's just better for it, just to let it sit. We've already notified the residents in that area, or Kevin did, of the one that was going to have a graduation party this week. They understand that there's no way the blacktop will be down, so. But for right now, it's just basically it's on a hold until, from what Kevin and Gary Zappa, the contractor, told me today, is they're hoping to, if it does dry out enough over the weekend, they're hoping maybe towards the end of next week to try to get at least the first lift down of asphalt. So that's pretty much where we sit.
okay. We haven't run into any unanticipated problems or conditions or anything?
No.
Okay, good. Any questions from any members on the project? Thank you. Cedar Drive North and Webster Street North intersection street repairs. Did take a modest detour on the way over here and drove through that intersection right after the downfall. So I can, with very current information,
Basically,
you.
yeah. Basically, you have a memo in front of you regarding this. Basically, the problem we have with that intersection is that, for number one, it's basically that intersection is 30 years old. Those roads in that area were stuck in 1981. That intersection is extremely flat, so there's very little, a lot of water. We have a large flow of water coming off from the parking lots of the school. Coming down the Webster Street Hill, coming from Webster itself, and it all meets at that location, at that intersection. And with it being so flat, and with the shape it's in right now, the concrete, everything else, the water has a tendency just to sit at that intersection. And in the wintertime, that creates a lot of ice buildup, which means we're out there doing more salting and everything else. And basically, I've had our patch contractors that look at the thing. I've had other seal code contractors look at it, and basically they're all at the point where they're saying there's nothing can be done as far as by them. They recommend that the village have that intersection basically taken down, have the base course replaced, and then have it re-blacktopped. I met with Gary Zappa. I also met with Kevin Ohm, the engineer. We went out, looked at it, see what we'd done as far as the project. Gary did give us a quote on what the repairs would be. Kevin also in that packet, that one there, also on that, just because there's no storm drains in that area, near storm drains are at the intersection of Michelson and Cedar. So with that, I just had Kevin, we talked about it, we looked at it, we knew it was going to be very expensive, but Kevin did send me today what he thought it would cost to actually do a storm sewer project, actually get inlets at that intersection, then also inlets down mid-block before Michelson Street. But if you'll see, that's on the very last page, and you'll see it is rather expensive.
We don't have any storm sewer in there.
There is no storm sewer in there at this time.
Wow.
My thing is then, but I discussed with Kevin, and both of us have a thing, that street did last 30 years the way it's constructed now. If you'd go back in there, and what we recommend is a wider concrete gutter system, the actual valley gutter. If you would actually widen that out, replace it, with a little wider one and everything else, and put the street back and everything else, it would probably last another 30 years. So
I don't disagree. You don't mind me
Yeah,
saying.
and that's-
I tend to
it would
agree
be a
with
lot
you
cheaper
there.
than the $114,000.
Yeah, I don't think we
project.
need to.
The only thing is where this comes from is the cost and everything else, which we can send this back out,
Yep, I
Did
agree,
it. Everything else, but the money's gonna have to come from somewhere. And right now, the only place we got the money to come out of here would take it out of the seal coating. Because basically, those streets are listed to be ones that are up for seal coating, and we cannot seal coat those streets with that intersection in that type of shape.
If the primary problem in that intersection is, as you say in point two, and you also indicated this, that it's fairly flat and so water stands in the intersection. If the intersection itself, I'm not talking about any storm sewers, just the intersection itself is reconfigured, will it be raised and
Actually,
crowned?
yeah,
or
what it'll
would-
do is
What would
it-
be done so we don't still have a flat
Well,
intersection?
right now, it's sitting at about a .03 or .503. And when we're actually, if you look at Gary's bid, everything else, taking shots that he's talking, and the engineer basically went out and he kind of looked at it and he agrees that you could get more slope from the one side to the other if you reconfigure that and just build the base up some. You could get a little more slope from north to south at the intersection that would help push the water down Cedar. It would just take a little more shaping there when we go to set the concrete valley gutter. It's not gonna be a large amount, you're not even probably gonna notice it, but it'll be enough to at least move the water.
So there won't be standing water?
So there won't be standing water there, it'll be down the street some. The biggest problem you have right now is just the deterioration of the
Yeah.
existing concrete
It
gutter.
hasn't been a large problem area,
No,
correct?
well,
It's just deteriorated
it's
now.
just deteriorating and
And
everything
like you
else.
said,
And
we've gotten 30 years out of it
we got
before.
30 years out of it.
Do you think it'd be wise to put a concrete valley in there? Part of this deterioration is exaggerated by the fact that we have concrete and asphalt. If we're gonna do that, why don't we just do all asphalt and let it go at that?
Yeah, well, we looked at that and everything else while we discussed that, and Gary thought it would be best if we had an actual concrete, and so did Kevin. And, 'cause I thought the same thing, should we just do it all in asphalt?
Well, you
and
know as
everything
well
else?
as I do
Yeah,
that.
anytime you have,
You mix these elements, that's where we're gonna get
Yeah,
the
they-
deterioration.
but both of them felt that, it'd probably be best to stay with the concrete, but widen it out more, so the water stays within the trough.
I don't know, I tend to disagree with them myself for the dollar amount for putting that in. And primarily because of dollars available, how often that's a one-way street through there, right?
Basically, see, Webster is a one-way street.
Yeah, so we're not talking heavy traffic, but do
Um,
buses go up there?
Yeah, buses, that's where the buses
Yeah.
load is on Webster
Okay.
Street.
I don't know. I would look for the most economical route to get it fixed, and if it was up to me, I would make it all asphalt and see how far we get with that, because what do you think you can shave off this $8,000? $3,000 worth of concrete, you think?
I have not received a breakdown, yeah, that's all I received.
I'm only, I would like to see that looked at first, regardless of what Kevin says, or Gary.
Well, I agree. I think we also, no respect to the quality of this bid either, but I think we should get bids
Mhm.
and get them with the alternative. Have it priced both ways so that we've got,
Yeah, if it was
Some
a
data to look at.
busier street, and since we're not putting in the storm sewer and all those things, I'm not so sure we'd be compromising ourselves, and given the fact that we don't, I'd rather take, if that concrete part of that's $2,000, I'd rather put that into the crack filling and seal coating for this year and worry about this thing, even if 5 years from now or 10 years from now, if we're shortchanging ourselves. Because you could still put in some concrete then, but I really don't like the idea of pulling $8,000 out of the seal
No.
coating and crack filling
Well,
program.
when we get the numbers with the seal coating, you're gonna see we're not gonna get much this year
No,
anyway.
and
so.
because of that, I'm willing to compromise a little on the engineering end, especially on a street corner that isn't terribly overused.
no, that's gotta be a very light traffic area.
outside of buses during the school year.
When the buses
Bus
load and go, do they go on up Webster, or they turn?
They
and-
turn, most
they
of them.
Turn and go north
yeah,
there?
Majority, most of them turn toward Michelson.
That's still fairly light use in terms of numbers of vehicles that go up that street, you know, overall. That would be my feeling on this particular thing. I'd be curious to see, have Kevin arrange it so we can do that with just, without the concrete, see if we can shave a couple grand off this somehow. Simply because if we gotta take it, because of the, taking it off the seal coating and crack filling program, I really don't wanna start cutting into that anymore, and we have to.
No, I agree. I think, you know, the seams and stuff like that, you know, that's where the ice gets in and sits and ends up blowing stuff up. Less seams make sense to me, and there's a lot of streets that need, you know, that have a lot more traffic that if we don't do the seal coating and crack filling, you know, we're liable to start losing them, you know, too, to the same kind of heaves and stuff. So, yeah, I would like to see what the bid is without that concrete gutter.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we get bids both ways, so that at least we've got data on which to make a decision. But I think you're right, Mark. It's, I don't think you need a motion to do that, just go and
No,
get the bids, and let's have alternatives and bring it back, hopefully by the next Public Works meeting,
Yep.
and look at it and move forward. Review of bid results. We've got several street projects segueing right into crack filling and hot mixing.
The first one will be by the staple that has a letter A. That's your
Yep.
crack filling. Basically, I'm going to tell you all right now, everything is over budget. Yes, I pretty much figured that was going to happen just by from what I was hearing from the contractors. So, and actually, we don't have that many contractors left in the area. Some of the ones that bid last year are no longer in business, so or have been taken over by other companies. So, first one we have is your bid notice and everything else for the advertisement, the list of the streets that we went out and decided need to have crack filling done. Small specification at the bottom that all cracks had to be routed to 3/4 by 3/4, blown out, and then the hot rubberized sealant that meets DOT specifications. And then also touching up any sunken or failed cracks as necessary. Yeah, you know. Then you have the bids from both Farner Asphalt sealers and also Precision Seal Coating. And you can see the prices. And then the very last one is my recommendation. The thing about all the crack filling is all something that, you know, I know this has been brought up before, is, well, if we got budget for this much, why don't we just do that much worth of streets? Well, basically, where do you stop? You got cracks that have to be filled, and if we don't, the most important thing is getting the cracks filled. If we don't get the cracks filled, the water goes in, and that's pretty much it.
What's the third?
Start potholes.
This is seal. What do we got here? I got
A,
4 pieces.
yep.
This is,
Yep, that's
A
it.
is-
That's where we're on A's. Just
Okay.
A's packet.
this is the one you're
Yeah.
That's one we're on right
sticking
now.
with?
So we've got a $12,000 budget.
Yep,
We've got a 15,815 bid. You're recommending that we accept that bid for that amount,
correct,
and the amount that's over then reduce what we do on seal coating.
correct.
Okay, but don't we have the same, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, just discussion. But wouldn't we have the same situation if we don't fill the cracks? I understand then we've got continued deterioration, but if we pull back on the seal coating, don't we have the same situation if we reduce that? If we're gonna pull back on one or the other, you're saying pull back on seal coating as
Correct.
opposed to crack filling?
Correct. Crack filling, if you don't fill the cracks, the water definitely gets into the cracked area and everything else. Seal coating, when you go to seal coat, your cracks are already filled. We've already done the crack filling on those streets, or they are crack filled prior to us doing the seal coating. If you cannot seal coat over a street that has not been crack filled or hot patched, because basically that seal coat is not gonna day, it's just gonna drop into those cracks, and that's gonna it's, when you seal coat, you're only sticking over a small amount of,
Seal coating
sealant.
kind of adding some
Yeah.
life to the surface of
What
the
is, yeah.
entire street.
what it is, when you do crack filling, you're extending the street by making sure water cannot get to the base. Just like hot patching you're doing to raise areas that are lowered, especially like manhole covers.
Well, let's more simply put,
Yeah.
crack filling fixes mistakes in the street, cracks, they're
Yeah.
flaws. Seal coating is a maintenance item. It'll add to the life of the
Yep.
street.
All seal coating does is extend the life of your streets, basically. But you have to have them crack filled before you can seal coat them.
Setting that aside just for a minute then, and going to seal coating just sort of in general terms, you would be able to prioritize the streets that we were going to seal coat and say, if we have to pull back
Yep.
$3,800, these are the ones we would not do then, based on the condition of the
That's
street?
why when I do it, I always have them list the number of streets, that way, and I know, then what I do is I take the streets off the Pacer report. The streets that, what it says, either 5, 6s, or even worse at times, like when we, but, what we do is we may make sure that we do the ones that need it first. Like on this, when we get the seal coating, you'll see you'll have one street that's a number 5 this year, and 4 of them are number 6s. So one's a number 5 should definitely be done, because that is the lowest one on the priority list now. Every year we go through that, Pacer thing.
Okay, well, I guess that makes sense to me.
But the biggest thing now is 2 of those streets that are on the list for this year that'll be in front of you when we get the seal coating, are 2 of the streets that basically need to have that intersection fixed before they can be seal coated.
Right,
Um,
right. Everything sort of fits together, doesn't it?
Yep.
Okay, on this specific agenda item, then the recommendation of Public Works Supervisor is to accept the low bid from Farner Asphalt Sealers of $15,815, which would in fact complete all the streets on the list. That is over budget by $38.15, and the recommendation then is to reduce seal coating budget by the $38.15. What's your pleasure, committee?
I'll move to approve the bid from Farner for $15,815 for the streets listed on our packet A.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to recommend then to the full board the acceptance of the low bid from Farner at the indicated $15,815, and that assumes then a reduction of the seal coating.
Yeah, I
Right.
thought that'll just, when we get to that,
Okay.
we'll give them another number.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and that is carried.
So we have just X amount to work with, one
Yep.
way or the other anyway.
Okay, then let's go to B, which is hot patching and flex patching bids.
Basically, you have a list of the streets in front of you. These are basically, as you'll notice, some are patches, some are, well, they're all patches, but some are street patches, some are around valve boxes, some are around manhole castings. Biggest thing is they break up in tendency of the area because of the movement of the casting, and then also after a while, some of them will just lift enough and they won't settle back down, and that's when our plows start hitting them and stuff like that, so. And basically, we only had one company that turned in a
Bid.
bid,
What was our budget for that particular?
$6,000,
$6,000.
$717 over
Oh, I'm
budget.
sorry, I didn't get the last page.
And this would also come out of the seal coating.
Correct.
Yep. All right, I will move to approve Farner's seal or hot patching bid of $6,717 for the streets listed on our packet B.
Is there a second?
Packet B.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend the low bid from Farner Asphalt in the amount of $6,717. Any additional discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and that is carried. All right, now we add 717 to the amount that we're going to be reducing seal coating. we better get the seal coating pretty soon while we still got some money.
Actually, before we do C, switch to packet D.
Okay, D is the repainting of the crosswalks and street markings.
And you'll see again a list of all of our streets, everything else, or all the crosswalks that need to be, crosswalks, intersections, everything else.
This budget is $3,000.
Yes, we only received one bid. Price of paint went up. I think mostly because the fuel costs went up, you know, so just, and my recommendation
you-
was on the very last.
Oh, let me see your recommendation.
Now, this one, you know, I did have it coming out of the seal code and everything else, just basically because I don't know where else we can take it out of. But the amount of traffic signs we have to purchase yet and everything else.
Okay.
So,
Is there any indication, do you have any sense that Farner Asphalt, and I need to say this carefully because I'm certainly not accusing them of anything, but do you think that there's any awareness that they are the only bidder, and so because they are aware that they're the only bidder, they don't have to be a sharp pencil?
no, actually, their price that they gave us this year is very close to the price they gave us last year.
We've used
But the
them
company
quite a
that
bit.
gave us the price last year only charged us $2,800 to paint crosswalks last year. They're no longer in business.
Remember when we got the bids
That
for
might be a reason, huh?
that St. Croix Station Road and
Yeah.
how much
Oh, yeah.
less they are? Well,
Yeah.
that's what you're seeing everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's less people able to give us prices.
And actually, we had another company, Becky knows, they actually contacted us, they requested the bid specs for painting the crosswalks, everything else, and we never heard back from them. Because they were out of where, somewhere down by Milwaukee?
Yep, Pewaukee.
Pewaukee, yeah.
Oh, man, to come up here for a $3,000
Yeah,
budget
they
is
had-
hard.
to them, it was,
And
we never received anything back,
and
so,
these aren't real big jobs.
no.
No, that's my point. It's a pretty
These are-
small job for
yeah.
a company from Milwaukee to
Yeah.
mobilize and
And-
come up here.
Yeah, and for like this, Farner or Scott Construction, any of those, they will coordinate it to do our work when they're also doing work for Somerset or Hudson and Richmond, all that stuff. They come into St. Croix County and do all at the same time.
All right.
That's pretty much what they try to do.
Are we just taking Wisconsin bids, or is there Minnesota, I mean, does this go out?
Oh, anybody, we send the things out, anybody can do
I'm
it.
just curious, I
Just,
mean, because it's like all the way from Milwaukee, I mean, there's nobody in the Twin Cities that does this?
we had one, actually one company that called us that's actually working in the cities right now. They actually gave us a price on the crack filling and everything else, and they're actually a company out of Wisconsin, but they do most of their work in Minnesota.
Addressing the painting of crosswalks and areas without being too cavalier for public safety, how bad are they? Do we need to paint them every year? And is there any reason we couldn't paint the real bad ones?
Number one, we don't have a machine for it. you
Do
know,
we,
so-
I'm talking about a roller and a can of paint.
I don't think I'd want to do that.
Okay,
I don't think it would
I know
look
it's
very-
preposterous, but if we're looking, we're talking, not much money left for some things to do, these streets, and they're gonna really start costing money if we can't keep up with them a little bit. I mean, is there something, honestly, do we need to paint every one of them?
I would say you could probably get by with some of the less traveled ones, maybe up on Helen Street and everything else. Ones around the school, you're definitely gonna wanna make sure they're done. The ones on the highway have to be done.
Looking at the list, to the point that Mark is making, when were most of these done? How long does typical painting of a crosswalk last?
Basically, if you use the more expensive paint, which you pay a lot more for, you can get up to 3 years in a crosswalk. Kind of paint we use and everything else, basically you're doing them every year. If you look at.
Would it be cost
Like
effective
the
to
one at-
use more expensive paint and have it last 3 years then?
Well, like the one at, if you notice, there's one intersection on the highway that is not on this list, and that's at North End Road. Because that was done by an epoxy paint when they redid the highway, when they did the milling out there, everything else, and that crosswalk still does not look bad. It's, it's starting to show its signs of age. It'll probably have to be painted next year, but she does not look bad. I brought this, that up, at times too, is
Let
it?
me ask another silly question. Are we mandated to paint those crosswalks by anything?
I would say if you're gonna, basically, if you're gonna have the signage out there and everything else for a crosswalk, it has to be
But we
painted.
don't know for sure.
I know around the schools, school crossings do have to be painted.
Well, driving back and forth, I mean, Hudson seems to, do they have a machine?
They have their own machine.
They have their own machine.
Yep. They have one crew that they do that all the time. That's all they're out doing all summer long is painting curbs and gutters and crosswalks.
I'm not advocating not doing it. I'm not advocating getting our own machine. I'm just asking,
No, but I mean, you know,
The
we
shortage.
rent some of our stuff out, and some
There's
of
an
our people
interesting
think
point.
that
Have we
that's
talked to
sharing
the city of
between
Hudson about
community.
subcontracting or
We have in past years, yes.
renting their people and having,
We have in past years, yes. Just like we've also talked to them about street sweeping, and basically they're not interested because their equipment's tied up enough doing their stuff.
yeah, they're not, you gotta pay for their manpower just like you would
well,
anybody else.
I understand that, but
And their manpower might be more than what a contractor might be able to provide manpower for. Because some of these guys might not be union, might not have the same benefits that the Hudson guys do. They're
Well-
not, point is, they're not in a real great spot to be competitive, nor the desire to be competitive either, when we found out through the years.
This is something that if you want me to contact the city of Hudson and talk to them, we can put this on the agenda for next month because the crack filling has to be done before this painting the crosswalks is gonna be anyway, so.
well, I'd like to have the inquiry made. And Mark might be right. They might come back with a price that exceeds this.
Yeah, I mean, since we've only got
But
one bid.
I
it
think
would
we ought to
hurt
find out. You know, I think any time local units of government can share resources in some fashion, that's a good thing. Why don't we do that? Why don't we defer this? Because you're right, these other projects have to be done before this one. And simply inquire of the city of Hudson and give them this information and have them give us a proposal and compare it to this.
Yeah, I'll
I
talk
think
to
that's
Tom.
advisable.
I haven't, like I said.
Talk to Tom Zuli.
Yep, I'll talk to Tom, because last one I talked to was the person before Tom, and they were not interested at all. So then we just pretty much stopped.
Well, let's make the inquiry. Okay, now let's go to C, which is the seal coating bids. And we've got a little bit of money left over, right?
Yep, because basically out of the 14,000, you've took $4,532 out so far before crack filling and for hot patching leaves you $9,468.
What was that number again?
$9,468.
For C?
That's what seal coating right now. If we don't do it, but the line painting in there, that's what you have now.
Leaves us.
Okay, the 10th Street North cul-de-sac is a Pacer rating 5, so you definitely do that one.
Correct.
The others are 6.
The others
So
are
if they're all
sixes.
6, how do you prioritize those?
Basically is what we can afford to do. And you gotta take Webster and Cedar out of that because they need to have that intersection done.
How much we got to work with?
$9,468. Basically, if you would hook if you want to do Prairie Drive this year and 10th Street cul-de-sac, that'd be $8,715.
Yeah.
If you want to do 10th Street cul-de-sac and Sand Hill Point, because next year, also that's on a 6 pacer rating, but I didn't stick on the list because we can't do both the streets at the same time because of the amount of traffic at the school at North End Road. It'd be best to do one year and one the next year. And if you would just take 10th Street and Sand Hill Point together, you're only 5,311, but, so.
Let me throw this up. $9,000 worth of seal coating. Why don't we just skip it all and do it, add it to next year?
I don't think it can be just switched over that way.
Well, I'm not, just bear with me on the you're talking about the financial
Yep.
mechanism of it. let's say we work out that detail somehow. Bringing these guys in for night, we're picking and choosing one thing to do, when we might be better off if waiting a year, if we're not talking about utter destruction of these roads, with anticipation of perhaps next year if something changes, where we can actually have them come in and get a little more done. Because I got a feeling as these projects get smaller, our purchasing power gets awfully small too. Just throwing it out there,
Yeah.
because I mean, we're picking at $9,000 worth of seal coating.
Yeah, and you know, I,
Half a block.
yeah, and basically, the thing I see with, I know Scott Construction's been very good about coming in and doing even small amounts. We list out the streets, we take what we can afford to do, everything else, and they just make sure they do it at the same time they're doing other communities. But when it gets to be a small amount, like $5,000, they start looking kind of, you know, by the time they're mobilizing guys, you know, unless they really got something real close, you know, they're,
My guess is we're gonna have some other street projects probably pop up along the way. I mean, we're already looking at this Webster Street deal. There's a proposal for $8,000, which we might be able to cut in half, maybe. There's $4,000 of that. I don't know. All I'm suggesting is for $9,000 worth of seal coating isn't gonna get us a whole lot.
that's what,
But
that's
it
kind of
might
what.
be able to buy us the completion of some other littler projects without dipping into something we don't even have to dip into.
Makes good sense to me.
That's why I was pretty much looking at, you know, when I started going over the numbers and seeing how much we're over budget, I started looking at this, and that's when I really got seriously thinking that this might be the time to get that intersection up there fixed and get it ready for those streets can be seal coated next year, you know, and that's just my feeling.
Yeah, so we could make sure we get the paint, you know, or if we have to do certain crosswalks that, I mean, we add more
Yeah,
money up to
yeah.
that from not doing the seal coating. Because like I said, you know, I mean, 10th Street cul-de-sac, that's that's a big block long is basically all that is.
Sandale Plains.
Prairie is 2 blocks, a little over. Sand Hill doesn't look like it makes a block, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, I think we could postpone this stuff, make sure we get that crack filling done for sure to extend it, and then the Webster and Cedar intersection can be done, you know, because we're going to be waiting on that, and if we keep these weekly deluges out.
And maybe we try, I wonder if we try for the better paint for those crosswalks, would it be cost effective?
Could do that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I sure hate to think that there's a possibility that we're being penny wise and dollar foolish if we're doing these things every year, and we could be doing them every 3 years.
But there's quite a difference in paint. It all depends on there's 3 different types of paint on the market, and there is quite a, I had them actually all priced 2 years ago, and they're looking at
Enough to justify doing them every year. for the
basically
reduction.
with what we had in the budget last, and that's what was decided is to.
That really seems interesting because the labor, it would seem to me to be one of the big components of painting crosswalks, bringing in the
Yeah.
truck and the labor and doing it.
Most of
Blocking
it's
the streets.
mobilization, you know,
Yeah.
just getting the trucks up here.
Yeah.
Well, without spending precious dollars that we're saving, which will go pretty fast, but we might want to look at that because it'll make it simpler next year if we don't have those crosswalks on our list. Because there's $4,000 that we may not have to be using that could go towards this seal coating thing.
Yeah.
And you know darn well we'll.
Even if we go down with something with the mid-grade that gets us to every other year, you know, we're doing it instead of every year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you think if you keep laying enough on there, it'd build a little bit of a base.
Yeah,
All
where
right.
my kids were at the college, there's a rock that the kids paint all the time. I honestly believe that rock must be about this big, but it's got about
Yeah,
this much paint
yeah.
on it, it's now about this big.
Well, I'll move.
Well, you've heard the discussion, are you prepared to?
Yeah, I'll move to forego seal coating, forego the seal coating proposals for this current year.
Is there a second?
Yes. I didn't know if he was done making the motion for,
I didn't know how else to word that, but
Well, yeah, effectively, the motion is to recommend that we postpone all seal coating for this year into calendar 2012. Any reaction to that, Mark, from the standpoint of the, not the dollars, but the delay of the seal coating, the referenced projects, and what you think would be the condition of those a year from now?
Basically, I think all of them could most likely last another year. Of them, the worst, of course, is the 10th Street cul-de-sac. She is showing signs of wear, everything else, but she ain't at a point where, well, I'll put it this way. The worst street we have right now in this village is basically Lakeview Drive. But that is so far past, even there's no contractor that will even give me a price on seal coating that street, because basically it's ready for a mill and overlay.
That's a 3 rated, isn't it?
Yeah. And 10th Street cul-de-sac is nowhere near that
5.
at this point.
Okay, any additional discussion? If not, the motion is to postpone the seal coating projects for 2011. All in favor, aye?
aye.
Opposed? Same sign, and that carries, and that will be the recommendation then.
Only thing with the two that you're sending to the village board, the crack filling and the hot patching drill, you'll have to do that. I'm actually on vacation that week.
Okay.
I will be in Milwaukee, so.
Okay.
So,
Cleaning of 3 sanitary sewer lift station
this actually is,
wells.
that's actually, I'm gonna table. The prices have not come in.
All right.
Basically, well, just for information, so you know, all 3 of our largest, well, our 3 lift stations that we maintain, one at Crowley is not online yet, so we're not worried about it. They're not having any grease problems. We're having a problem with all of them as far as grease, and also, like that letter I showed you last
Foreign objects?
thing, we have foreign objects in the East Bank lift station. So basically, what I'm recommending is that we have the lift stations pumped down, we have them power washed, get all as much of the grease and stuff, and make sure the bottoms are cleaned out and everything else, and get them so they're clean, as clean as for a sanitary lift station can be. But,
yeah, I'm not gonna be doing my laundry down there.
yeah.
What kind of dollars are we talking about, you think, with that?
One preliminary price I got in, but this is actually a company that does quite a bit of stuff. It would be, that's what I had written down.
You know, Mark was thinking that maybe we could paint the crosswalks ourselves. Is this something that, Mark could go and clean out?
Me?
Yeah.
I have cleaned septic tanks out before, Daryl. That's what my old man does, some of my first jobs.
Really?
You go down there. And if need be, I'd do it again.
So you're gonna get some cost figures
Yeah,
and we'll
well, yeah,
revisit
the one I
this
have right
issue?
now from here, this is from Infotech, they're a company out of the cities that comes in and does our line televising for us and stuff like that. Their price per structure would be $215 an hour. They estimate 1 to 2 hours per station. And that does not include the disposal of the grease and what they pull out of it. They pump it up, and they also, we have to provide them a dump site. And I've met with Jim Schreiber from the, contacted Jim Schreiber at the treatment plant. And Jim says what they've done and what he's kind of recommended is, in the past, is they've actually had local septic companies come in and actually clean the wet wells like they're cleaning a grease trap. So they're using power washer, everything else, they're getting the grease out of it. And he says they have chemicals they can add to that they can actually field spread that stuff on the ones that still have sites to field spread. And they'll actually break down the grease enough where they can actually field spread it. And like he says, it's probably going to be cheaper. So I've been in touch with a couple different ones, but none of them have come in yet and looked at it or given me a price back on what it would be.
Okay, let's postpone that and revisit that next month then.
That's what I'm
You got
having.
some budget figures?
Actually, what I did is I gave my, I did my projected year end and gave that to Gloria to actually do a spreadsheet on and everything else, and I did not receive it back, which I forgot to ask her for it, and I don't even know if she had it ready or not, so. So actually, at this time, I do not have that
All
for you.
right, we'll postpone that as well. Anything else, Mark, under your report? Activity?
Basically, the only thing, there was an incident last Friday that, or actually on the June 10th, that required us to work some additional hours us in the treatment plant. We had a, basically we had a grease trap at Mount Maria's overflowed and went into the sanitary sewer. And so there will be a bill going back to them from the treatment plant and from us regarding the amount of hours worked.
It'll cover our costs.
It'll cover our costs, and basically what it is, the treatment plant sent me a bill, and basically, to get we have to pay them for their personnel and their jetter being up here, so that means we're gonna have to send the bill on. And then once we also included just what overtime we had for my department, the three of us. I guess the biggest thing is, I'm gonna be looking into, and I'll probably be asking Becky for help, is we're gonna have to basically, make a list of all the places that have, some kind of grease traps, and make sure that they get sent letters telling them that they're required to make sure those things are kept clean, so that they do not overflow into our system, so.
When that happens, like in this case, when it overflows and goes into the sanitary sewer, how is that known?
Basically what it is,
known
well.
At the treatment plant, or
Well,
what?
what it is
what's-
basically, Mama Maria's reported at 2:30 in the afternoon that they were having a sewer backup problem. And when we got there, we started opening manholes and we started seeing signs of grease. That's when and this is not the first time this happened at that facility. This is actually, it happened roughly, I want to say about 2 years ago. And basically, but this time it was on a Friday night, it was overtime for all of us and everything else, and basically, they had a mess. It's gonna be, he not only had to have us on site, the treatment plant on site, we were doing our lines and everything else, but he also had to have, Tri-County Sanitation come in and drain and clean the wet well. And he also had to have, another company come in and unclog his sewer lateral. When that grease gets into that stuff, that grease gets very hard.
Probably
And it-
coaguulates.
Or
and-
it-
yeah.
It's colder, it goes
Yeah.
on,
Yep.
dams up. and-
Calls and jams up, and that's it.
Yeah.
We had grease as far as south of North End Road.
Wow.
Right by the mini
And
storage.
basically, and then the treatment plant, when this happens, when they start getting that much grease and more jetting, and the grease keeps going downstream in the village, and then slowly gets to the lift station at Sally's Alley and gets pumped into Hudson. So Hudson had all the lines cleaned from North End Road all the way to the treatment plant. Anything where that sewage went down, so. And
So a
plus-
little
plus it also-
situation has a lot of
Yeah.
downhill effect.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
That all gets billed back to the restaurant? Hmm.
Mark, did you want to review the claims as part of your supervisor's report?
I guess if anybody wants to look through them,
Yeah,
if
we
I
don't
did.
normally do
I-
that in the meetings.
Oh, I know it was just something that some of the other committees were doing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
What I do is set it out there, and I
Yeah.
got told, they barrels,
Okay.
I
That's
looked
good.
at them, yep.
Have any questions?
Okay, if there's nothing else from anybody, our agenda's completed, we're adjourned.